So I'm going to get started. So what I'm talking about today, I'm really excited to talk about, is the new changes the SEC approved right before Christmas of the marketing and advertising rule. So more specifically, the SEC has created one new rule that is going to be replacing the cash solicitation rule and our advertising rule. So 20641 and 3. So into one new rule. And essentially what they've done is caught up with the times. Go figure. So this rule hasn't been changed since 1961. Now I know a lot of advisors, they are excited about this rule change. They're excited about what's going to happen, what they can do, what this means. So a couple of different things to keep in mind. The definition of advertisement has changed. They're looking at it now from two prongs, and that's any communication, direct or indirect, that the advisor makes that offers their services to prospective clients or private fund investors, and then any new services to current clients, current advisory clients or current private fund. So new services, whether that's to a prospect or to a current client, that's prong one. Prong two deals with the endorsements and testimonials. And that's what's replacing the cash solicitation rule. So I'm going to start with the endorsements and testimonials. I think that's kind of where everyone is the most excited. I think prong one is more like compliance's problem. So we'll do that second. So let's talk about the second prong, which is the endorsements or testimonials. So no longer prohibited. SEC is going to be getting rid of the no action letters that we have traditionally relied upon in terms of, something that wasn't in a rule or guidance, but showed up in a no action letter. So those are gone, and now we can just solidly rely on this new advertising and marketing rule. So let's start with reviews. You are allowed to have reviews. So that can be on your website. That can be, say, like Google or Yahoo or Yelp or any one of these different platforms. Now, keep in mind that when it's a review, it's generally being done by the client, right? So we have to make sure that depending on the platform and how or why that client's left the review, that we as the advisory firm are making certain disclosures. So that means, let's say you reach out to a client and say, hey, you said you were so happy and excited about the services you've received from us. Here's a link to Google. If you leave us a review, we're going to send you a $25 gift card. That's perfectly fine. Yay, you're allowed to do that. The threshold is under $1,000 in the previous 12 months. So the thing that you want to keep in mind is, how do we track $1,000 in 12 months? Well, kind of like your gift and entertainment blotter, you want to keep track, whether it's a good old-fashioned spreadsheet, or you have some sort of in-house tech or CRM. You want some sort of way of tracking how much you're paying clients for testimonials about services. So, if you are giving $25 gift cards out, if a client brings over 100 clients, keep in mind that you can rapidly cross that threshold. So you want to keep track. And so this is something you want to monitor. So maybe you put in place a new task, whether it's monthly or quarterly or even annually, depending on how frequently you plan on doing some sort of de minimis compensation for these testimonials. You want to keep that tracking, and you want to make sure that you're checking in from time to time to make sure you're not running afoul of that $1,000 de minimis. All right. So traditionally, a client who left that testimonial, even a $25 gift card could trigger the cash solicitation rule. So that's no longer the case. Keep in mind that under the new rule, a client who leaves a testimonial meets the definition of what a promoter is. A promoter could also be a person at an affiliated entity or another advisor in your company. And keep in mind that a promoter is still subject to the bad actor rules. So any any bad act that runs that is part of the bad actor rule could disqualify someone as acting as a promoter for your firm. So keep this in mind. And again, from a compliance perspective, there has to be a way to supervise this. There has to be a way of monitoring this. So you want to implement policies and procedures. You want to track who's qualifying as a promoter of your firm, and you want to make sure you're conducting some due diligence into that person to make sure they don't run afoul of the prohibition on bad actors from acting as a promoter. So get your policies and procedures in place, make sure you have a way to track, and then you have to test, right? So I may not be a bad actor today, but I may go defraud someone in 6 months. And you want to make sure that just because I wasn't a bad actor today, that I continue not to be a bad actor. So your policies and procedures must also create a way to conduct, ongoing due diligence of your promoters. So whether you want to do that on a quarterly basis, semi-annually, annually, my recommendation is at least annually. You want to kind of monitor your promoters and conduct due diligence on an ongoing basis, and document. Of course, you want to document everything, because you might as well not do it if you don't document it. How else are you going to prove to the regulators that you're doing any of this stuff? So those are kind of your testimonials and endorsements from that way. Then you have third-party ratings, right? So there are companies that will rate your firm, they will rate your services, and sometimes these ratings are unsolicited, and sometimes you have an opportunity to go pay for a company to rate you or add you to a list. These are okay. These are okay. The thing that you have to keep in mind with these third-party ratings is you want to disclose how these ratings are conducted. Is there some sort of algorithm? What are the factors that are considered in that rating? And then are there any conflicts of interest, right? So is this an affiliate that's doing this third-party rating? Is it someone that's an unattached third party? Are they doing it based on AUM or the size of your firm? What are the factors upon which they're making these different rankings, right? So we hear about these different organizations that rank, top 50 advisors in my state or top 50 advisors in the US. How are those rankings done? And then keep in mind too, some of the concerns we have over stale ratings still exist. So while we still need to disclose how these ratings are done, whether they're paid for, you want to also keep in mind that if they're stale, you don't want to use something from 2009 that says, you were best advisor 2009. It's stale. It's no longer applicable. SEC rule states that you have to provide disclosures and satisfy certain criteria pertaining to the preparation of the rating. So again, making all these disclosures. Now, the question is next, where the hell did I put these disclosures? Where do they go? So it depends on where you're posting them, right? So at a minimum, you want to put something in your Form ADV, which Form ADV will be going through some updates in the next 60 days, because there will actually be additional questions we'll have to answer as part of your annual amendment process and going forward for your other than annual amendments, where we have to disclose some of these activities. So keep that in mind. We're going to see some changes. We're going into annual amendment season, so that piece is happening. So you're going to make certain disclosures in your ADV brochure. When the changes that happened in ADV Part 1, you're going to have to make the updates and disclosures there. And then wherever you post. So say you have a bunch of ratings on your homepage on your website. You are going to want to have some sort of statement underneath, or if someone clicks on it, it goes to a disclosure page. But again, you want to make sure that when someone's looking at these different ratings, they understand how those ratings were obtained, what were the factors considered, did you pay for it, was it elective, etc., etc. So that's a lot of it. Now keep in mind, this rule has been under consideration for a year. It just was approved and is going to be activated in 60 days. And then at which point firms are going to have 18 months to comply with the rule changes. So like all new SEC rules, we're going to expect additional guidance to come out. We're probably going to see testimonials pop up on an area of concern from OCIE in terms of compliance and examinations and inspections. So we are going to get additional information about how to appropriately comply with this new rule and the different deficiencies that examiners are seeing when they're going and conducting examinations of RAAs. So we'll, of course, get more information, kind of like Reg BI, right? We got some guidance after the rule into effect. There's been a bunch of examinations. We're getting more guidance from the SEC in terms of what they're seeing with Reg BI compliance deficiencies. Same thing here. So Google, Yelp, Yahoo, all these different third-party rankings. Again, disclosing in your ADV, to the extent you don't claim your business page, for example, and it's an unclaimed page people are posting, or if there's testimonials on your Facebook page, on your LinkedIn, woohoo, on your LinkedIn, you can get testimonials. Again, you're going to want to have some disclosures. So, did you request them? Was the person compensated? Was there some sort of perk? Because remember, this is can be a cash payment or something with a kind of de minimis value. So maybe it's a mug. Maybe it's I had one client who was giving away iPads. Must have been really high dollar referrals. It could be firm swag, it could be gift cards. That's not exactly like green hard money cash, but that you still have to consider the value of the things that you're giving in exchange for these testimonials and endorsements. All right, I'm gonna pause there. There are some general prohibitions. They're very much akin to the anti-fraud provisions that we've traditionally seen. So, you can't be misleading. You can't make an untrue statement of material fact. You can't include information that would reasonably cause an untrue or unreasonable implication. So you have to be very careful about your language. You don't want to be too much puffery. Creating a fair and balanced treatment. So you don't want to discuss for example, if you get a bad review, right? Fair and balanced treatment would indicate that you should leave that bad review. Unless, let's say, this is some troll who's never had any interaction with you, never has contacted anyone at your firm, then yeah, you have an argument to go to Yelp or Google and have that review removed. But if this is a legitimate review, if this is a legitimate person that's had an interaction and they post a negative review, don't get it deleted. Sorry, guys. You got to take the good. You got to take the bad. So if you get some bad reviews, just go out and get a bunch of good ones from your clients to bury the bad ones. What else? Let's see, referencing specific investment advisor. This goes into the performance results part of the rule. So there are some prohibitions. They're what traditionally have been there. Don't be misleading. Don't be untrue. Don't lie. Let's be real. Untrue just means don't lie. Don't lie. Don't mislead. Don't say something that could kind of mean something else and be confusing. At the end of the day, regulators want to see that a person off the street can read something and be very clear on what it means. So I'm going to pause right there, and everyone can unmute themselves if they have a question. So if you have a question, by all means, feel free to ask now.
Well, we're not dictating the content of the review. So, I mean, the fraudulent, we're not in the habit of violating those rules anyway. But if a client is very enthusiastic or a collaborator is very enthusiastic or something about that, we're not supposed to dictate what they say, are we?
So you can dictate. So you can say, "Hey, love for you to leave a review about, an onboarding process and how you felt about that." So that is some guidance on what you're requesting a client to review. Or maybe a client says, "Hey, I don't know what to write. I'm just so happy with you guys. You've communicated with me. Can you give me some language that I can write?" I know I've had clients ask me that when we ask for reviews. So that can be seen as you guiding or dictating your client on what to write. Um, you
Most people that want to do a testimonial for me, I mean, we're never talking about performance or actual outcomes. They're just talking about my approach, my methods, and my communication skills. That's really what they talk about.
Yeah, I mean, and that's great. I mean, there will be times though that a client may be exuberant, but again, this also deals with how much control you have. If a client goes and posts something on their own Facebook page, which has always been true, in terms of you have no control over that, and
Mm-hmm.
the SEC has always considered that beyond your control, so they're not going to come and ding you, and they never have dinged anybody for a client on their own Facebook page raging on about how wonderful their advisor is, because you have no control. This is really about the control you do have, and then how
Okay.
you're using different ratings, endorsements, and testimonials, right?
Okay.
So there's the clients that have actually interacted with you and your team and interacted with your services. There's endorsements, which can come from a client or a third party service provider, from a business relationship endorsing the services. And then there are rankings, right? So rankings by different platforms, media, companies that go out and they research the best X number of advisors or wealth managers, the 5 diamond wealth manager status, you know what I mean? So you have to kind of distinguish between all of those. And at the end of the day, what they want to see is very clear disclosure on how they're being used, if anyone's being compensated, if it's a ranking, what it's based upon. And then to the extent you do have control over something, so you claim your Google business page, that you're making sure that there's a fair and balanced presentation of testimonials, right? So what I was referencing before about negative and positive. If you get a negative one and it's legit, you're gonna have to keep it there.
So my ADV part 2B, in my case, is where I would put that. And for example, if somebody has a business that does Medicare related insurance and has wanted to endorse me as a go-to person, I would explain why I have the relationship, whether or not there's any compensation, which there isn't, and then just say that this person from time to time enthusiastic or just not enthusiastic, this person from time to time will refer her clients to me, and say that this is, of all the people I know, I endorse Alan Ray and his business for you.
So in that case, it depends on, where she's publishing that endorsement, right? If this is just coming up where she is talking with a client and it's like, hey, why don't you go talk to Alan?
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily something that you have to disclose. So, like, I'm getting referrals from this lady and she
Right.
talks so highly of me. What we're talking about is when these endorsements are published and then
Right.
utilized by your firm.
She wants to put, utilized by my firm, not hers. Oh, okay. So if she puts them in her kit, I still don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, because again, this has to do with your control.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is kind of
Alrighty.
like with someone like having their own Facebook page, right? This is her own business page.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah. So this is something where it's being utilized by the RIA. So like if I were to go on my website and say, hey, all my clients, you want to know a fantastic advisor? Go talk to Alan Ray, and I put you on my page. You have no control over that, because you could ask me to take it down. I could say, go pound sand. I'm not taking it down. I get so many more views having your face on my website, Alan. What are you talking about? I'm not taking that down. You have no control over that. So it's what you have control over and what you're utilizing in the marketing and advertising of your firm. So in your case, the RIA would disclose that they allow their advisors to compensate, under that $1,000 threshold for reviews, testimonials, referrals of other clients. And it would discuss in that. And then if they thought that maybe there was more specific information to include in your individual to be, then sure. But yeah, if someone else and you have no control over their endorsement of you, unless you're using it yourself. So say, hey, my friend over here, say you link to her page from your website. Or you copy and paste or do a screenshot and add it to some marketing material. Then we need to talk about how to properly disclose that relationship and how those endorsements work. Yeah, because it's really hard too, especially when it's someone endorsing you that's not regulated by the SEC or the states. Say it's a CPA, say it's an attorney, say it's maybe like your area of expertise is working with divorcees and helping them invest after a divorce, and you're getting a bunch of referrals from a divorce attorney to you. Unless you're using a quote from that person, or you're like linking back to their website or something, if they put something on their website, that's beyond your control. Good questions though. Any other questions?
So Layla, on a site like Google, specifically reviews on the Google platform, where an advisor may not have the ability, let's say there's a quote bad actor that leaves a review, presumably there may not be an ability for the advisor to ask Google effectively to take that review down. Mm-hmm. What would be your thoughts in that instance in terms of how an advisor could utilize all of the other reviews without coming across as cherry picking?
Good. So few things. So if it's something where let's say you claimed your page, so you have control over the Google review on the business page, and you get a bad actor, you can certainly document your effort to reach out to Google and say, hey, I'm in an industry that's regulated. This person's left a review, good or bad, but they're considered a bad actor and they're not allowed to do this. So document your efforts in getting that removed. And if you can't, then you just document it. So if it comes up like, whoa, wait a minute, this guy's a bad actor and he's, written this wonderful review about your firm, you're like, yes, I know, we try to take it down. Here's where we tried and Google denied us. Now, let's say you don't own you haven't claimed your Google business page. Again, you have no control. So, I would say don't even try, because if you're trying, then they're going to be like, well, part of you trying should have been you claiming your page and then trying to clean it up.
Right. Got it. And then in terms of effective dates, so you mentioned, 60 days from when it was published in the Federal Register. However, some of the early articles that came out, even the legal voices within those articles were suggesting that compliance period of 18 months, as if advisors would not be able to take advantage of the new rules until a much later date. It sounds like from what you're suggesting, the effective date truly is the effective date, but there might be some additional guidance and certainly compliance departments that look for additional time, but anywhere from 60 days out and thereafter, advisors could start potentially to begin operating under the new rule. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that's accurate. Yeah. You have to consider, they give the 18 months because, you have a firm that may have 10 advisors, and building out those policies and procedures and system for monitoring and supervising that activity is going to be a lot easier and faster than, say, like an Edward Jones or a Merrill Lynch that had thousands of advisors. And this is, a system and oversight that they have to create and implement. And it's going to take them a lot more time to do that than a smaller firm with 10 advisors. So that's why we see kind of that compliance time frame. So yeah, I mean, once it's effective, it's effective. It's an effective rule. So by all means, start your marketing. Start your marketing now and make those plans to start using those testimonials and start talking to clients and gearing up for that. Now is certainly the time to build out those systems and start testing them and see what works. Hell, I mean, it could be as simple as you onboard a client and You create a drip campaign, and after 6 months, it's like they get an email about, leaving a testimonial. So those are all systems that need to be built, and that's why there's that effective date and then kind of a time frame in which firms to comply. And yeah, inevitably with every single rule that changes, there's always going to be additional guidance. There's always going to be time in which we're going to see examiners go out and see what firms are doing and come back and tell us about the deficiencies they see.
And then you mentioned that you expect some additional guidance coming out fairly soon. Are there any open questions in your mind that you didn't see in the rule that you anticipate guidance coming out around specifically by chance?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a little bit of a gray area, right? So you talk about, misleading statements or needing to disclose like third-party rankings, like how they're coming up with these rankings. And some companies don't give out the secret juice of their algorithm. They may say, oh, it's based on, reviews or size or, maybe it's revenue growth. But then my question is, well, how much can we say that we're going to rely on that company and that they didn't just pull out some gross revenue number out of their ass? We don't know where they're getting gross revenue numbers.
Yeah.
So, there is some gray area over that, like how much due diligence is needed, and then the extent of all the disclosure language. The rule says to be clear and prominent in your disclosures. Well, does that apply to the ADV brochure? Does that apply to the website? Does that apply to, Facebook and LinkedIn? Where does that apply? Is that anywhere, or just where we're making disclosures that we're doing these different things? So I want to see more kind of guidance on the expectation, like Form CRS, for example, ADV Part 3. When it came out, they were very clear. This has to go on your website. When you deliver Form CRS to clients, it has to be the first document on top of the stack of documents that goes out. It was very clear in terms of how that form had to be positioned and where it needs to be posted and how it should be posted. So again, getting some more guidance on the extent of disclosures, what they want disclosures to address, how much due diligence, testing, ongoing testing. So we talk about bad actors. Someone may not be a bad actor today, but they may be in 6 months. So what's the reasonable expectation on the SEC in terms of this testing ongoing?
Got it.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, well, I am around. If you guys have any, you can always reach me personally, Leila, Leila, at myrialawyer.com. You can also reach out to our general inbox, which is just info@myrialawyer.com. This is, listen, this is a great thing. So don't let all of these other requirements keep you from moving forward and using testimonials. It's incredibly important in the growth of any small business or large business, to be frank, to utilize the experience that your customers are having. So if you have any questions about how to update your policies and procedures, when these ADV changes occur and you're having to respond to those questions in ADV Part 1 and ADV Part 2A, certainly feel free to reach out and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you guys for joining me on New Year's. I wish you all great joy, prosperity, and expanded business opportunities for you guys in the new year. So thank you so much for joining me. All right, guys, take care.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Bye.
So I'm going to get started. So what I'm talking about today, I'm really excited to talk about, is the new changes the SEC approved right before Christmas of the marketing and advertising rule. So more specifically, the SEC has created one new rule that is going to be replacing the cash solicitation rule and our advertising rule. So 20641 and 3. So into one new rule. And essentially what they've done is caught up with the times. Go figure. So this rule hasn't been changed since 1961.